All right, welcome to the next lesson, choosing your mileage allowance. So, this is an important topic to cover. It's a thing that scares a lot of people about leasing, the mileage limit, going over, getting charged extra. And I think the mistake that most lessees make is they just don't calculate what their normal driving habits are. So, they go into the dealership and they just pick the payment that's the lowest, and they just guess at what they think they drive. And of course, they get it wrong and they go over and they have a penalty to pay. So, the way that we get around that is we are smart about it. So you should calculate the actual mileage you use in a typical month and contract your lease to match your driving habits. So how do you do that? Track yourself. Write down. Go look at your card right now. Put down, on a Monday what your starting mileage is at the end of the week. At the end of Sunday, mark it again. See how many miles you use that week. Keep that going week by week for an entire month. See how your weeks match to each other. Is it pretty consistent? And then you can decide if that's a pretty accurate month, and then extrapolate that out times 12 times 36. And then you can get your lease to match your actual driving habits. So that's just something you should do. It's a no brainer. It gives you the knowledge that you need to make the right decision. So the standard mileage limits for most leases are 10,000 miles per year or 12,000 miles per year. You can actually get like 7,500 miles per year if you ask the dealer, but that's pretty low. I wouldn't recommend that. Typically, the lower mileage limits are for more like exotic cars. Standard everyday drivers, 10,000 per year, 12,000 per year, which translates to 30,000 miles total for the 3-year contract on the 10,000 one, or 36,000 miles total for the 12,000 miles per year for the 3-year contract total. The excess mileage fees can be anywhere from 10 to 30 cents per mile if you go over. So an example, if we had, let's say, a 20-cent per mile fee at the end, if you went over and you went over by 1,000 miles, you would owe the leasing company $200. So, 1,000 or 2 miles, 3,000 miles even is not that big of a deal. It's nothing to really freak out about if you're over a little bit. It's only a few $100s. And a few $100s of charges at the end of a lease can usually be dealt with. I'm going to give you some strategies in some later lessons on waivers from the leasing company, or if you're able to trade in because the value of the car is actually higher than the loss in value from your extra miles. It may just be a wash. So when you're just a little bit over, it's nothing to stress about. So if that's you, don't worry about it. You'll get some tools later on to deal with that situation. Now, if you go over by 10,000 miles, and then we start getting a little bit more of a serious charge. So 10,000 miles at 20 cents per mile, you're going to owe about $2,000, and so that may not be able to be dealt with as easy. So that's somebody who goes over that much just probably picked the wrong mileage limit. All right, next, let's get to high mileage drivers. So, this is one reason why I think a lot of people don't lease, because they're like, listen, I'm a high mileage driver. I'm going to use the car up. I don't want to pay. I'm going to put a lot of miles on it. I don't want to pay a big penalty at the end. And that's not a bad, that is correct. I mean, miles translate to however many miles you put is how much use, or how much of the car's value you've used up. So if you're going to use up an entire car and drive it till it's worth nothing, then probably leasing isn't right for you. But if you can actually estimate you just need a little bit more than normal, like you can get a lease for higher mileage with like 15,000 miles per year. That's going to be 45,000 miles total for the 3-year contract. You can get a lease for 20,000 miles per year. That'd be 60,000 miles total for the 3-year contract. And you could even, I've seen leases with 30,000 miles per year, and that's 90,000 miles for the 3-year contract. Now, the payment's higher, obviously, because you're using more value. So your residual value is lower, like we discussed previously. So you're going to pay more of your payment to cover that use or depreciation of the car during the 3 years, but it costs less to contract for higher mileage than it does to pay an excess mileage penalty at the end. You actually get a discount on the miles when you build it into your payment. You let them plan that they are expecting the car to come back in with those miles, then as opposed to you just taking the miles without paying for them and then having to pay the penalty. The penalty is higher than doing it built in. So if that's you can get these. You can just ask the dealer to write you up a contract with higher mileage. Now, we don't do that while we're getting quotes. We always get quoted for 12,000 miles per year. And I'm going to explain why that is later on. It gives us apples to apples comparisons. But once we find the best deal on a lease that has 12,000 miles per year, then we know that's the best deal. And we can then add the miles we need after the price has been negotiated on the car. And it'll be, pretty standard increase based on, it didn't matter which dealer you got the car from, because it affects the residual value. And that comes comes from the leasing company, not the dealership. So you get the best price out of the individual dealer, and then you add the miles on after you've just agreed on the price of the car. So we'll talk about that more in a later lesson. And one last thing is, like, for people who then buy a car and don't lease it, and then go back to trade it in with a whole bunch of miles on it, you pay for that loss in value. When you trade in a high mileage vehicle that still has a note, then you're paying negative equity. You've paid more for the car than the same person who's leasing. So no matter what, you pay for the miles you use either way. So like I said before, if you're not driving a car, until the wheels fall off and it has no more value, if you're going to try and trade it in, then you probably should pay less for it. Just be smart. And if you need higher mileage, contract it into your lease. Thanks. I'll see you guys in the next lesson.